Welcome everybody to the Genus weekly video. This is week 19, and being the 19th week made me realize just how long we've been in this now. I believe the first one of these was done on March the 21st, so it's been a while. For those that don't know me, my name is Grant Conroy. I'm a portfolio manager with Genus. I've been here for just over 4 years now, and joining me today is the returning Justin Hahn, who is Genus's market analyst, macro research analyst. Welcome, Justin.
Hi, everyone. Thanks.
So getting right into it, the markets this week seem to have been slightly down for the week, and just wondered what has been driving them.
So this week was actually a very interesting week. The market started off very positive on some of the earnings coming out, which met or beat some of the expectations, as well as some positive news on the fiscal front from Canada, US, and Europe. But it was only until a couple of days ago where the market started turning down due to some of the increased tensions between US and China.
Yeah, that's interesting. The S&P, I guess, hit a new high on Wednesday, I think. The tensions between the US and China seem to have been simmering for a while. We had all the trade talks at the end of 2019. How do we view the tensions now and their impacts on the markets?
Yeah, so looking at some of the tensions and what happened this week between the two nations was some of the consulates being banned in both the US and China. US starting in Houston, banning some of the US consulates and shutting it down, as well as China reacting to that and retaliating today, shutting down the US consulate in Chengdu. So although this is something that we're looking at and watching closely, we don't think it's going to have too big of a market impact yet. The China trade deal with the US, China still seems to be holding up on their end, with soybean purchases hitting new all-time highs between the US and China, as well as other commitments China is actually holding up on their end. So it's more of a political front at this point with China and US, but we'll be watching it going forward.
Great. I guess it's there's always worrying news out there for the markets. It seems there's always something to focus on. Jumping back to the earnings front, you mentioned earnings starting this week, and I realize that's around the world that earnings have been reported for the second quarter for companies. What have we seen so far? I guess with COVID impact, it's very different to normal.
Yeah, so earnings this week for this quarter, there aren't too many companies that have reported, but some of the bigger companies have reported a lot better or meeting expectations at least, which is very positive for the market and proves why the market was really strong starting this week as well as last week with the positive impacts from earnings. In the US, I believe it was about 75% of the companies that have reported have either met or beaten the expectations of analysts, as well as Europe showing a lot bigger positives coming out from that region, with a lot of the COVID impacts happening earlier, so they were able to quarantine and shut down a lot earlier.
Great, thank you. And I guess the expectations were quite tempered coming into this as well. I guess estimates have been lowered, and it's probably important to identify that earnings are going to be down year on year for most companies, but they're actually, if they're better than what people were expecting, that's obviously a good thing. They weren't hit as hard. So sometimes I guess stocks might react positively, even though the numbers look bad on a year on year basis, just to do with the expectations. I also noticed that there was a lot more rumblings this week around extending the government stimulus, both in Canada and around the world. What are your thoughts on that?
So a lot of the stimulus has been positive on the news front in all the regions. Starting with Canada, Canada announced an extension of their CERB benefits for COVID impacts by a couple of months, I believe. The US has been floating around about another $1 to $2 trillion stimulus package aimed at either direct checks again or maybe a payroll tax cuts. The details are still fuzzy, but I believe that they plan to have some kind of result or some kind of framework at least by next week. And the big news this week was actually coming out of Europe. When I was first on this In Focus piece with Leslie, I believe, we mentioned that the European Union had finally agreed on an agreement for a COVID relief fund. That was back almost 2 months ago, but now after 2 months, they finally signed it and fully agreed after kinking out some of the details, ironing out some of the details, as well as getting all the countries to agree.
Great, and that's similar to the other countries, to Canada and the US, where that's supporting citizens around Europe, I guess.
Yeah, so they built this relief package as a COVID relief package, I believe, and it's targeted at some of the more harder hit countries such as Italy and Spain, and it seems to be valued at about 750 billion euros. So it's quite a big stimulus package, which we've seen happen in Canada, US, all around the world.
Right, and I also noticed this week that the S&P ratings agency reaffirmed Canada's AAA rating, which obviously, given all the debt that's been issued, is encouraging. And I believe one of the rationale that they gave, or the reasons, was that they expect the stimulus to actually help Canada achieve more growth next year coming out of this. So whilst it's a lot of debt that's being issued, it's not always necessarily a bad thing if it helps the economies, I guess. Well, thank you very much for that, Justin. It seems that the markets and the news flow are starting to incorporate a little bit more than just COVID in terms of the earnings coming out, which is encouraging on this path of getting out of the crisis. I would encourage everyone watching, if you have questions, to reach out to your PMs, be it on the video or anything else. We're always happy to try and help. So thank you for watching and have a great weekend.
Thanks, everyone.